Yes, sir. These are.
On Yemen, in the last 48 hours, there have been 3 air attacks by Saudi-led coalition against civilians, killing at least 17 civilians in one strike, and others. And I feel the United Nations is mute about what's going on in Yemen. You mentioned it every now and then. Procrastination in releasing that report about children in armed conflict, under pressure from Saudi Arabia, again, as you have been accused. These accusations are littering the media everywhere, that the United Nations is yielding to pressure from Saudi Arabia. Why is this? We have a catastrophe in Yemen, unlike any other place in the world. More than 700,000 people
I appreciate
cholera.
your statement. I would love to hear a question mark.
The question is why the United Nations looks mute with regard to the disaster in Yemen.
I think for anyone who has been listening, and I know you have, we are anything but mute. We have been talking about Yemen, not now and then. We have been talking about Yemen consistently here in this podium. We have been talking about Yemen consistently in the Security Council in very stark terms. We are anything but mute. The report of the Secretary General on Children in Armed Conflict will likely go to the Security Council, most likely at some point today. You will soon be able to see for yourself and judge the report for itself and judge the Secretary General's position for yourself. And I would ask you to reserve judgment until you actually read the report. The Secretary General took his time in putting the report together to ensure that he had a report that he was happy with, to have research that he was happy with, and he has taken the decisions concerning the report that he feels are the right decisions. And I would ask you to reserve judgment on that until you've actually read the report.
Today you read a statement by representative in Syria about aerial attacks against civilians in many areas. When did Ismail will Sheikh Ahmed issue similar statement about Yemen? He always sounds like he's trying to balance, to appease those aggressors all the time.
The Secretary General's Special Envoy is not appeasing anyone. He is involved in political and diplomatic negotiations. He is but one voice of the UN system on Yemen. The Secretary General has spoken out. Our humanitarian colleagues, whether successive emergency relief coordinators, heads of UN agencies, the Secretary General in their briefings to the Security Council have been very clear about the unacceptable, heartbreaking suffering of the people of Yemen. I will come back to Evelyn. I will come back to.
It's close to 800,000 in reality, as they say.
I know
Yemen.
Those numbers come from us. So
yes, of course, and we don't hear any update about progress in combating cholera. That's something more urgent even than the hurricanes and the Rohingya situation, because this is only parallel to what happened in World War I, that a nation is left to rot with cholera. And the United Nations
Nizar, with all due respect, you don't have to explain to me the crisis situation that we have in Yemen. As I said, we've talked about it repeatedly. Whenever we receive updates from the World Health Organization about the number of clinics, the number of rehydration corner stops they've set up, we share them with you. The fact that there is not a regular update from here on exactly what WHO is doing does not mean that our colleagues in WHO and UNICEF who are on the ground in Yemen are not working every day with Yemeni health professionals to try to combat this outbreak of cholera.
But obviously, the banning of medicine reaching those who need it and the food. 8 out of 10 children in camps are suffering from acute malnutrition in the camps.
I'm fully aware of everything we said, and I think the bottom line, Nizar, is that we have been flagging this issue consistently since the start of the conflict. We could not have been clearer in in making sure that all the parties involved in this conflict understand the horrors they are imposing on the people of Yemen, a country that was already extremely fragile before this conflict started. And the ongoing conflict has made it worse. Our continued call is for a halt to military operations. Our continued call is for the parties to sit down and engage constructively with our special envoy.
But those who are laying siege should be finger pointed. They should
I
be
think
named.
we have been very clear on that front.
What's your position regarding holding the cranes in Dubai for such a long time?
The crane. Let me give you. I had an update on the cranes. We understand this is a little bit earlier this week that the World Food Program received funding from USAID to procure 4 mobile cranes to increase the offloading capacity at Hodeida. The cranes were denied clearance to enter Hodeida port by the coalition in January and remain in Dubai in the manufacturer's warehouse. We obviously would want to see those cranes deployed.
So what's the reason for keeping them?
I think that's a question you need to ask those who've denied us entry. Mr. Lee.
Sure. I want to ask you about Kenya and Haiti. In Kenya, I did see, or I guess Farhan sent a statement by the UN Information Center there. But things I wanted to ask you about this because we often hear from Gordon Brown in here about attacks on schools, and there's been a widely reported tear gassing of a nursery school in an attempt, I guess, to get the Raila Odinga and Nassau supporters. A school was tear gassed. So I'm wondering, is it only Gordon Brown's job in the UN system, or is the UN?
I had not seen that report, and it is clear
extreme.
that we and the Secretary General and others have spoken out whenever schools have been attacked. But I will look at that report.
And the other one just has to do with Haiti. I noticed that the Deputy Secretary General is meeting today with Josette Shirin, who we've been asking to have some Q&A about the cholera issue, and also then with Paul Farmer. So is the Deputy Secretary General the point person on the response to the UN and cholera in Haiti? And also, is it possible, given that Ms. Shirin is in the building, that she can
I think we'll
do a
have
stakeout of some kind? Or?
We will have. We'll try to have Ms. Shirin talk to you maybe after she's able to do her first visit to Haiti. Thank you. And Brendan will now brief you on behalf of the PGA. Yes, you may.
When is the Secretary General leaving?
He's leaving Saturday morning,
Yeah.
and he'll be back in the office on Monday. Thank you.
Good afternoon. On migration, today was the start of the substantive negotiations on the modalities for the Intergovernmental Conference on International Migration. That's the conference that will adopt the Global Compact on safe, orderly, and regular migration next year. Migration is one of the President's priorities, and finalization of the Global Compact is one of the items that has been mandated by the member states for this session. The Fifth Committee, which handles administrative and budgetary matters, today adopted its program of work and heard opening statements from member states. Many delegations stressed that this session of the Fifth Committee is important because it will be considering the UN's regular budget for the next biennium, 2018-2019. It will also be considering the Secretary General's proposals on management reform, among other topics. And I was asked in this room last month about the 4 countries who had lost their voting rights in the General Assembly due to being in arrears. Those countries were Somalia, Comoros, Guinea-Bissau, and Sao Tome and Principe. The Committee on Contributions in a report had recommended that those 4 countries be permitted to vote despite their arrears, since their inability to pay their dues was linked to circumstances outside their control. This afternoon, the Fifth Committee will consider that report. And finally, tomorrow at 11 a.m., the President will hold a dialogue with civil society, which has been organized by the Department of Public Information's Outreach Division. That will be an ECOSOC, and will be broadcast via UN webcast and Facebook Live. And of course, you're all welcome to attend. And that's it from me. Any questions? Yes, Evelyn.
Any particular issues you expect with civil society, or just the whole gamut of everything in the world?
Probably the whole gamut of everything in the world. But he will, the President will focus on his priorities, on his agenda, on his vision for the 72nd session, and what his experiences have been so far as President, what he observed in the general debate. And I imagine that civil society will have a lot of questions for him about how they can best work with him to advance his priorities and the overall UN agenda and help people throughout the world. Yes, Matthew.
I'm actually noticing that it looks like you've implemented this archiving of daily agendas, at least of a few days. So thanks for that. I did want to say, just on the agenda itself, it's this travel to Slovakia. Maybe I may have missed some announcement. How long will he be away? Is he going anywhere other than Slovakia? What's his
Sure.
plan?
It was only a quick 2-day visit to Slovakia. He's coming back on today's Thursday, right? Yeah, this afternoon he's coming back, this evening. So he'll be back in the office tomorrow morning. This is kind of part of his, because he still is the foreign minister of Slovakia, he will be checking in every now and then, doing some internal housekeeping matters with the cabinet there in Bratislava. So this was just part of one of those routine visits. The visit was completely funded by the Slovak government, and it was a super quick trip.
And just, I mean, because credit where credit is due. By putting up this archive, it seemed pretty easy. You might want to encourage the Secretariat to do the same.
Okay, all right. You can do that as well. Go ahead.
Does he still hold his EU position, or was that last year only? The PGA.
His position is just the foreign minister of